Journey to Greatness Character Lessons from the Past is an interactive lesson designed to help you discover how the challenges you might face today, such as fear, prejudice, poverty, not fitting in, or anger, can be overcome by learning how heroes from our past overcame similar challenges when they were young. Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr., and many other American heroes faced enormous challenges to end slavery and work toward freedom and equality for all. When they were young, they didn't know their actions would someday change the world. By never giving up and facing each new challenge in their life journey as it came, they became heroes. As you go through this lesson, you'll discover part of the journey to greatness experienced by Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Martin Luther King Jr. Before you do, let's begin with you and your journey. Take some time to think about some of the challenges we face in life. Which of these challenges have you faced? Fear or uncertainty? Racism or prejudice? Poverty or need? Not fitting in or not belonging? Anger? Get ready to experience some of the challenges faced by our American heroes on their own journey to greatness. By helping them deal with some of the difficult issues of their time, you'll be better prepared to confront issues that face us all today.
When I was 9 years old, my mother became sick, poisoned from drinking the milk from a cow that had eaten the poisonous white snakeroot plant. She struggled for life for a week. But when she knew she didn't have much time left, she called us to her side and told us to be good and kind to your father, to one another, and to the world. I decided I would keep this advice in my heart always. My mother died on October 5th, 1818. I helped my father construct a coffin for my mother, and she was buried in a nearby cemetery. It really bothered me that I couldn't attend school as often as I would have liked. I knew that knowledge is power, and it is something no one can ever take away from you once you have it. I tried to read as much as I could, and I read anything I could get my hands on. I wanted to improve myself and get the education and skills I needed to have a better life. I also practiced writing letters of the alphabet. When I didn't have paper, I carved letters on wood, or I wrote in the dust, sand, or snow.
Even though my master punished people frequently and harshly, I was not often whipped by him. Something that caused me more suffering than the whippings was hunger. I had very little food, and it was boiled, coarse cornmeal called mush. They would put the mush into a big trough and put it on the ground just like they were feeding pigs. We had to eat the mush with our hands. Even worse than the hunger, though, was the bitter cold. I had no shoes, no socks, no coat, and no pants. The only thing I wore was a coarse linen shirt that hung down to my knees. I didn't have a bed, and so on the coldest nights I would take a corn sack and crawl into it, trying to shiver myself to sleep on the cold, damp dirt floor. I don't know how I survived the cold. There wasn't much for me to do because I was so young. I would drive the cows up in the evening, keep the birds out of the garden, keep the front yard clean, and run errands for my old master's daughter. By 1834, I was working for William Freeland. Mr. Freeland, my master, only owned 2 slaves besides me. Their names were Henry and John. They were very smart, and while I was there, I encouraged them to learn to read. They were eager to learn, so I agreed to teach them. On Sunday afternoons, I would give them reading lessons at the home of a free colored man, and slaves from neighboring farms would often come and learn too. Everyone knew, though, that they had to keep these lessons a secret.
Miss Susan didn't have to pay much for me, being only 7 years old. I was so small that when I went to work for Miss Susan, that I had to sit on the floor to be able to safely hold the baby. Besides caring for the baby, I had to do the cleaning and other household chores. Since I was so young, I hadn't yet learned how to do those kinds of chores. My mistress, Miss Susan, didn't teach me how to clean, but she sure did get mad when I didn't do a good job. Luckily, Miss Susan's sister took pity on me and taught me how to clean and do other chores. I was so tired. I'd spend the day doing household chores, then spend the night rocking the baby so it wouldn't cry and wake up the master and the mistress of the house. Now, if that baby did cry, Miss Susan would whoop me with the whip she kept under her pillow. One day, I was whooped 5 times before breakfast. The scars from those whippings would remain with me till I got grown. Finally, when I was weak and nearly starved, they returned me to my mama, who nursed me back to health. Later, in 1835, when I was 12 years old, the masters had pretty much figured out that I wasn't cut out for household chores. Instead, they had me working outside, doing work that was usually done by men, such as working in a flax patch. I had to walk through the field with plants that was twice as tall as me and stiff stalks that would scratch my legs as I pulled each plant up by the roots. When I wasn't working in the flax fields, I was shucking corn, weeding the wheat fields, or shoveling manure. Other times, I would lift heavy barrels of flour into carts. I did like this work more than the jobs inside the house.
One time, we went to a downtown shoe store. We sat down toward the front of the store, and the clerk came up and politely asked us to move to seats near the rear of the store. When we said we were comfortable where we were, she said we'd need to move to the back. So my father took me and we walked out of the store. I had never seen my dad so angry. Dad told me that day that no matter how long he had to live with things the way they were, he'd never accept it. Even though my mother and mama had tried to explain why things were the way they were, I wanted more information. When I was 12 years old, I started reading books that taught me more about history of slavery in Africa and here in America. I read books about the Civil War and the freeing of the slaves. I read about people like Harriet Tubman, a former slave woman who helped many slaves escape to freedom on the Underground Railroad.